I can pretty much worry about anything. I get more worried when I don't think people are worrying about the thing that's worrying me.
Is there any tech that you are scared of?
AI video,
like deepfake stuff?
Deepfake type stuff, when there's no consensus on what reality is, that's terrifying. That genie isn't going back in the bottle.
And what do you think about...
That's depressing, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
You just managed to depress me.
What, us? We managed to depress you.
All chirpy with a spring in my
Charlie,
step.
I've told you my
Mr.
theory.
Misanthrope.
My theory is that we're already in the apocalypse.
But how does
we
that...
don't know it yet.
How do you stay sane if that's what you think?
Well, we're joined now by Charlie Brooker, who is often called a kind of seer of our times, or the future that we're not quite in yet. Charlie, I was wondering, I've loved the new series. I've watched all 7 episodes now.
Well, that's good, because there's only 6.
Is that all right?
Well
I thought it was 7.
That's amazing.
The last one seemed so long. It felt like a 7.
Okay, well, I don't know if that's good.
Yeah. No. I was sort of thinking, I've watched it from the beginning, starting in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
At the start, it very much Black Mirror seemed, or was written up as being, even if you didn't mean it to be, a kind of warning about the near future, particularly with regards to technology. Times have changed a great deal. Politics has moved on a lot. Technology, that near world that you were probably writing about that then, we're kind of in now. Mm-hmm. Has what the series is about changed? Is Black Mirror a different show now than it was then?
I mean, it is and it isn't. It hasn't changed in my head, in that I think rather than intending to sort of go into it and thinking this is a warning, I must run out into the street and wave a flag and warn people, it was more sort of me worrying, because I'm a natural worrier, I think. And so it was partly born of my general sort of anxieties about where we were then. And I think at the time, technology was being portrayed in a very positive light. We had the Arab Spring. We had, like, social media was still... The worst thing anyone said about Twitter was, it's all people like posting photos of what they had for breakfast and it's quite bland.
It's banal.
But exactly. And now it's like a terrifying echo chamber full of people screaming. And I tend to sort of get anxious when I think everyone else is very calm about something. So I think I was slightly channeling that, but predominantly it was my attempt to do a show that was a bit sort of Twilight Zone, a bit Tales of the Unexpected, and so, but drawing on what was happening then, and so naturally technology felt like a natural focus.
It is funny when you think back to the timing of the first series. We were still using Nokias. Netflix, I think, had just pivoted from DVD rentals to streaming. And tech has now kind of caught up with the things that you were imagining as futuristic.
Yes.
I mean, do you think it's...
Should I have monetized it more? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I am.
Should have copyrighted more.
Do you think life has imitated art?
I think it's really because in a way, a lot of what the show does is looks at things and sort of, it's me worrying about what feels inevitable. So hopefully, what it means is, unfortunately, those worries may have been quite accurate. So I'm just extrapolating in the moment about where we might be. But again, that's not where I start when I'm sort of writing a story. I don't sit down and think, right, I don't open the tech pages. Well, I mean, nobody opens pages, do they, anymore? I don't scroll to the text page. No one scrolls anymore. I don't sort of look at... You
don't ask ChatGPT.
I don't ask ChatGPT what's happening in technology today, and please come up with a Black Mirror episode about it. I don't sort of start there. I think in terms of...
So where do the worries hit you at 3 a.m? Asked the Insomniac.
That's a very Emily question.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Are you an insomniac?
Well, I do a lot of thinking between 3 and 4.
Right. That's probably the definition of insomnia. Yes, I mean, worries can hit me at pretty much any hour of the day. So I will often I can pretty much worry about anything. I mean, you could sort of show me, those little wooden ice cream spoons you get. I could probably worry about that.
Yes.
Because one could really...
Hit you in the eye.
Get you right
Take your eye out.
Well, no, you could get it and just do that, couldn't you?
Yeah,
And
you could.
take your eye out. So I could worry about sort of anything. So worries come at sort of any time. And I think... But again, my reaction often is to sort of try to come up with a dark joke about it. And often, again, in Black Mirror, the ideas come from something I think is funny, even if we play the episode straight.
Do you want people to laugh at them?
Well, in the right places, yeah. Sometimes you definitely do. Sometimes there's definitely moments where we're deliberately going after comedy, or often sort of dark comedy. But yes, because some of my favourite stuff growing up, obviously I was massively influenced by comedy, and also I loved things like RoboCop, which was a great sort of dystopian sci-fi comedy.
It's funny you say dystopian, or even sci-fi, actually, because the first one, without giving too much away for those who haven't seen it, the first episode is called Common People.
Yeah.
And it's essentially about a couple who find themselves in a trap, a sort of healthcare policy trap.
Yes.
And actually, that doesn't feel very sci-fi. That feels...
Nowish?
Right. I mean, if you were American, or even if you were, trying to crowdfund for cancer treatment, this feels like a very tangible experience.
Well, and it's not just, in a way, it's not related to healthcare. It's not just related to healthcare, because what I was thinking about there, actually, so where that episode came about, I can spoil something. So they did this. Rashida Jones's character has a brain tumor, and she's offered this life-saving technology, which is amazing, but it works on a subscription model. And effectively, they can't afford to keep on the sort of premium tier, and she ends up spewing adverts at one point. Now, that's one funny thing that happens in it relatively early on. And that came about because I was listening to a podcast, and the host... I was listening to a true crime podcast.
I thought you were going to say it was us.
No.
Well, the same thing.
Well, it was the host pivoted from like describing a horrible sort of like, the police found the body by the canal at 6 a.m. into sort of an advert for HelloFresh or something. And I thought that's weird. It feels sort of old-fashioned and funny. That's the nucleus for the idea. And then you look around. Have you heard the word enshittification?
I feel like I have, yeah.
Right. Is it?
Yeah,
well, so enshittification is not my word. It's by this writer called Cory Doctorow, who coined this term, and it basically means how kind of digital platforms degrade over time. Yeah. Effectively. So they come in, offer you a great service, and then gradually, because everything has to expand and grow, the user experience...
it gets slower.
Yeah. It gets slower, or your Alexa device starts showing you adverts and you can't avoid them. Or there's 15 flavours of Uber or whatever it is. So I was slightly channeling that, and also channeling just a general sense, I think, that everyone feels like they're being squeezed. So that's sort of where it's coming from.
Out of control. That you haven't got any control when that happens.
That there's no control, and then and obviously a sort of healthcare related basis for that story. It made logical sense for the story, but also it then speaks to that too.
Do you find, in terms of the reaction to it, do people? I mean, we find in news sometimes, there are people, as the world and politics has become more quote unquote dystopian, or people find themselves like living in a timeline they didn't expect it. Do people sort of avoid the news? Is there a sense in which people sometimes say to you now, you know what, Charlie, I can't watch your show anymore?
Sometimes they do, which is probably why we've tried to put some, I should say, we've got some hopeful episodes in there this season as well. And I don't want to just depress people into, into a sense of complete inertia or despair. I slightly remember when I was growing up, I was terrified of nuclear war, which was partly
reasonable.
It was a reasonable
fear.
Because we grew up with Threads. Did you grow up with Threads?
Threads, and I sort of blame
Sheffield
Threads.
Girl.
It must have been terrible for you.
Right, we never got over
that's
it.
That's very close.
We've still got
Sheffield
the
was a top target for the USSR.
It was. There's a great clip that we found of where they went to Sheffield the day after the Threads went out and interviewed members of the public, and there's just this chirpy guy going, "Oh, I actually quite enjoyed it." Maybe seeing Sheffield get nuked was up his alley, but that I think that vividly,
probably from Rotherham, just over there for a day.
I don't know these petty local jealousies.
Famous Yorkshirewoman Emily Maitlis here.
So at least the nuclear war put an end to that kind of. No, but it absolutely. It sort of absolutely traumatized me, I would say, in many ways, because that made it palpably real. The threat of nuclear war. It made it. You saw a Woolworths explode.
Yeah. You have to have the very local detail. You have to have cupcakes and baked beans to understand the end of the world, don't you?
Yeah, like a bourbon biscuit, sort of like being fried as well. So, but in a way, I almost wish I'd never seen that, because it was so terrifying. It sort of paralysed me. At the same time, I'd watch things like Spitting Image, and they would mock, Reagan, and they would sort of mock. They would do dark humour about nuclear bombs, and I found that reassuring because I sort of felt like, oh, the world is crazy, but there's these other people out there who are saying.
So you're trying to make us feel better in a way.
Well, I think it does sometimes make you feel less alone, even
that
if
other people have these anxieties.
Yes.
So when you see that SNL, Saturday Night Live, is coming to the UK, do you think that we are in a good place to receive that? I mean, do you think the British public will find it funny, will receive it well? Do you think of that as being a sort of...
I think if it's done in a very British way, I can see... Like, I mean, because there's not been much sort of sketch comedy of late in Britain, and I think...
Is that because we're past it, do you think?
No, not at all. I think it's because it's expensive and very difficult to... It's very difficult to do. It's expensive and often it often fails, or it often doesn't sort of catch fire. And again, now a lot of people who would be doing sketch comedy are sort of on TikTok or on YouTube, I guess. So I can see it could absolutely work, because I do think there's a hunger for things that make you feel a little more sane, because there's some funny people out there who are also sort of seeing the same things that you are. And I don't mean in a kind of just applauding along. What's the Stuart Lee line about? I agreed the out of that. Not that sort of humour, but quite piercing stuff that makes you feel less adrift.
Perhaps not in this series, but some of your previous episodes have been very much about the fusion of politics and technology. That has been writ large in a way in the last few months, in a way that would go beyond anything that you've written. I mean, I could totally imagine an early episode of yours being about some, incredibly wealthy man who basically takes control of the sort of main media ecosystem platform that there is, and then uses it to subvert all of technology. That has literally happened, right? So what are your reflections on that? And does that mean that you sort of consciously avoid writing about sort of politics in that way now?
I think it's interesting. We haven't done that many episodes that are overtly about politics. In fact, I think we've done kind of one. And at the time, this was in 2012, around then, we did an episode called The Waldo Moment, which was, again, I was trying to channel a general sense I had that people were fed up and that politics wasn't working for people. And in that story, there's a cartoon character on a sort of late night satirical comedy show who's kind of like a puppet, a digital puppet, who runs for office, and it becomes a kind of a lightning rod for public dissatisfaction. And at the time, I felt like I didn't really get the story right, and I should have spent a bit more time thinking about it. Maybe made it a mini series rather than an episode. Now it looks quite prescient, because I think it did sort of capture. It captured something to do with a hunger for something different and a hunger for disruption. I think now, it's really difficult. It would be very difficult to try and outpace what's happening now and to do a political story about that. Also, I think we're just so exhausted from the news, or trying to avoid the news. I'm one of those people who's.
So when you see someone like Musk, is there anything you admire about him?
Anything I admire about him? There's a good question. He's got a good name. Hasn't he? He's got a sort of name that you
could write.
It's quite a Bond villain name, isn't it?
Well, unlike the names he's given most of his kids, which you can't actually spell.
Which are sort of formulas.
You can spell X.
Down. Formulas.
Are they like ungoogleable names? Is that the?
Oh, is that the idea?
I don't know what the idea is really there. I mean, how many has he got? Is he up to?
We don't know.
Right, okay.
I mean, will we ever know?
But is there?
He wants to have a legion, doesn't he? That's the idea. He's worried about, presumably, I don't know, a foreign takeover, and he wants to keep breeding for Britain.
That level of hubris surely is unsustainable. Well, or it isn't. I guess we'll find out.
Not if you're a big show.
I just wonder, what do you think the role of TV drama with regards to politics right now ought to be? I mean, we've just obviously had the kind of reaction to adolescence, and you've got the Prime Minister saying that he wants every school kid to watch this and so on. How would you feel if the Prime Minister got up in the House of Commons and said everyone needs to watch this episode of Black Mirror?
I'd be delighted, because it's a great big free marketing. It's basically a government edict to watch your show. I would be. How would I feel? Well, obviously, I'd be delighted for the free publicity, because I'm that cynical.
Are there any governments that don't allow Black Mirror? I mean,
That's
is this shown in Russia? Is this shown in
don't know that.
China?
I'm not sure that like Netflix is in Russia anymore, and I'm not sure that it's in China. I think it's
because you
like,
really
torrented.
could give people some ideas.
You could, but again, that's not the function of the show, because I do think that the show is predominantly, it's there to entertain. Predominantly, that's its job, rather than. And again, I think one of the reasons Adolescence was so good was it didn't sort of tell you what to think. Do you know what I mean? It did leave a lot of things open ended, and that's my favourite kind of stuff. I think you just slightly recoil as a viewer if something is you feel that something is telling you what to think.
But is that also therefore problematic when politicians use television drama in that way as a means of almost action or inaction? They're not doing anything; they're just telling you to watch this drama as if that's an end in itself. That's almost putting too much of an onus or burden on drama.
It puts well, again, I don't know, because surely if you are, because I mean, drama can, or television generally, can change your perception. It can or at least it can give you, it can sort of expose you to a different viewpoint.
Do you think there's, I mean, because you've written about how, when you were growing up, I mean, you were, in a way, you're kind of like that boy, right? You would be, I
don't think
imagine
I've grown up.
Well, all right, fine. But you know what I mean? Like in your room, watching sci-fi, playing video games. Maybe if you're growing up now, you would be the kind of boy that we're talking about and everyone's talking about as potentially being, exactly, problematic.
I've got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I worry about,
Do you worry about it, or do you think there's a moral panic with regards to tech and boys, or is it on the money?
Well, you see, as a committed sort of former video games journalist and a die-hard sort of nerd in that regard, I do think people worry too much about video games, certainly, in general. I do obviously worry, like I don't let my kids play Call of Duty or something like that, because I think they're too young to start blowing people's heads off, and some of the sort of discourse on there is quite scathing. I do obviously worry about that, and they have.
I love that as a critique. What? The discourse is scathing. Yeah.
Well, that's
what all the comment section says.
A polite way of putting it, but I think that video games generally are really good for brains.
And being online in that way?
And being online, now that's a slightly different matter. And again, I think that, I don't know, it does feel like a slightly untested experiment that I think like...
People said that about video games in the 80s, didn't they?
That, of course they did. Oh, yeah. I mean, my parents said it to me. Yeah. Like, it's a sunny day, what are you doing? And I'm, waiting for a ZX Spectrum to load a game, and it's going to take me 15 minutes. It's going to crash halfway through. It's sunny outside. But I guess now, I think... possibly a bigger problem, well, not a bigger problem, but certainly we're worrying a lot about what kids are being exposed to, but half the time they're probably staring at that because we're staring at our phones while they're tugging on our sleeves and going, Dad, can you help me with this? Or Dad, look at this. And I'm like, whatever.
Is there any tech that you are scared of? I mean, nuclear aside.
Apart from nuclear warfare,
it's quite an old tech.
Like AI video is like, as in like photorealistic,
like deepfake stuff.
Deepfake type stuff you can see is about to. I mean, it's already, the waves of that tsunami are starting to lap up on the beach, and where that goes in the next few years is potentially terrifying. If you can't, it's when you can't, when there's no consensus on what reality is. That's terrifying, and I don't know what we do to navigate that. I don't know how will, because we've never really been faced with that before.
Do you think we are going to lose our understanding of what is real and what is not? Is that what the next generation's basically got coming at them?
I don't know that we'll lose our, because obviously we walk around in the world, so we're not presumably, like, locally we'll know what reality is, I hope.
Well, we walk around in the world often looking down at
staring at our phones.
The Black Mirrors.
I don't know how that will pan out. I don't know, because also, I mean, it's interesting because you're seeing, at the same time, there's a sort of wave of, you could sort of fabricate a video of a celebrity or a politician sort of doing anything, but equally there's a wave of incredibly sort of nightmarish and bizarre special effects style sort of unreal video. So whether we'll all just become naturally more skeptical of what we're seeing rather than less gullible, rather more gullible, I don't know.
I'm sure our kids are already more highly attuned to fakery. Like, don't you think that they can spot? They can spot in the way you can spot a bad edit. You know,
Yes.
I can spot something that has been already cut. I'm sure kids are much better at spotting.
Well, and they'll just sort of take it in their stride in a way. Yes, they're not gonna. I think they'll the kids that are starting to look at this stuff now will learn very quickly it's not real and it cannot be trusted in a way that, you know, your sort of grandmother on Facebook takes things at face value. So yes, they're much more sort of media literate and probably more naturally skeptical. But what I just don't know. I can't work out how destabilizing that's, because you're already seeing there's already like competing versions of reality sort of out there, and that's worrisome because I don't know how you solve the problems we've got if you don't agree on what the problem is or whether there is a problem or whether up is down.
And what do you think about...
That's depressing, isn't it?
Well,
you
yeah.
You just managed to depress me.
Us?
I came
We managed to
here
depress you.
all chirpy with a spring in my
Charlie,
step.
I've told you my
Mr.
theory.
Misanthrope.
My theory is that we're already in the apocalypse.
But how does
we
that-
don't
how
we
do you-
don't know it yet. We
But-
just
How do you stay sane if that's what you think? Because I have to not think that because I've got kids. I have to sort of force myself.
Yeah, but we think
to
about
when you
politics
see like
every day.
forest fires and places
Yes.
burning and tsunamis and places flooding that should know, don't you just sort of think, oh right, this is like, we'll look back. Obviously we won't, but somebody would look back.
Not after the
Pebble
nuke.
will look back and go, they were so stupid. It's like the fall of Rome. Didn't you see the fall of Rome coming?
Yes, you could well be right. You could well be right. I sort of like oddly. So here's a strange thing. I think that is maybe to do with being when the pandemic happened. I was oddly calm because, in a way, I'd been worrying about something like that happening for quite a long time. When it did happen, you slightly think, oh well, everyone's
We're
worrying
vindicated.
about this now. Like, well, partly like, oh, I told you so. Everyone told you so. So partly you can feel like a smart.
So when the nuke does come,
Well, okay, there's no cheerful end to that
30
story,
seconds.
is there? Yeah, you can't go, try to
Told
lord
you.
it over somebody in the final.
Told you.
Calling
as
round.
the radiation comes down.
But I think there's something when a lot of people are worried. I get more worried when I don't think people are worrying about the thing that's worrying me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether
blase is the killer for you.
So you saying you think we're in the apocalypse? I don't know if that terrifies me on some level. That you say that, and that's the sort of thing that I might
I'm
think.
very cheerful with it.
Well, how can you be cheerful?
Oh, I'm fine.
You're
I just
fine
think
with that?
I'm sort of fine.
It's Insomniac's curse.
Right.
I just, I think we'll look back going, oh, it was already happening. It's all been happening. It's been happening for 20 years.
But that is doing our kids a disservice to have that attitude. Is that what I can't believe I'm saying this.
Cheer
but-
up, mate. Listen.
Lectured on optimism by
By
Charlie
Charlie
Brooker.
Brooker.
But the next generation, like we owe it to the next generation to not give up, and that like they may well surprise us. And I remember reading years ago, because I've always been like, I remember what's that? There's who wrote that book about London? Now I can't remember. Who is it? Peter Ackroyd.
Peter Ackroyd.
Yeah.
That book about London. There's a whole chapter in there about how people have always felt that it's the apocalypse. And there's sort of extracts from old diaries, and it's people going, well, these are the end times. Look at this. We've got carts with wheels now. Where is this all going
To
to
be fair,
end?
the Great Fire did perhaps put that in the mind a little bit.
Yeah,
Black
so
Plague.
so it was just kind of that I sort of held on to that thinking, well, people have always felt like this.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but I mean, eventually you're going to be proved right.
You talked about sort of shifting realities.
Mm-hmm.
There's an episode, Hotel Reverie, which I thought was brilliant, but was probably because I'm a sucker for black and white sort of old Hollywood films. It's kind of a love letter to that, but also it's kind of about AI, right? It's about the potential to what it's about is about a modern actress who's basically put into an old black and white film, and she takes the part of the leading man in that film, a sort of 1940s film, and it's reenacted. The rest of it is just done through AI.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of worry in your world, in
Yeah.
the TV production world, the film world, and so on, about how AI might be used. Is this your way of saying, don't worry about it too much? There are possibilities, there are ways of making this actually kind of brilliant, or are you worried about it?
I am worried about it, and I mean, I think that genie isn't going back in the bottle, and it has the potential to be a remarkable tool, and I can see that what I suspect will happen is, I think what everyone's worried about is you'll get an executive will sort of type into ChatGPT, make me a Marvel movie, but starring Spider-Man is made of wool or something like that, and it poos it out in 10 seconds. I suspect what will happen is you'll get kind of more like something like Avatar, where you'll have it will allow you to say, make a movie and set it in Dickensian London, and you could film it on your phone with humans, and then kind of
which is sort of what you're depicting in the episode in a way.
Kind of. I mean, it's kind of. I mean, in that the other characters are sort of AIs based on. It's a sort of version of what a large language model does, where it scrapes up all the human content and sort of emulates it. So I suspect you'll get things like that. Will mean that the cost of production plummets, but it also means that hundreds of people will potentially be thousands of people will be out of work, and that terrifies me.
I mean, do you think that's why you get the actors you do? Do you think they're all thinking, this could be the last role?
Well, according to you, it's the apocalypse in 10 minutes' time, so we're lucky to get anyone. They should be at home sheltering under.
Imagine our morning meeting.
You do a big cross range of actors, obviously, but there are names in there like Paul Giamatti and Rashida Jones, Chris Dowd, and all the rest of it. Do you think you attract a certain type of actor?
I don't know, because our episodes are deliberate by design, very varied in terms that we've done some which are sort of outright horror, and some which are bittersweet romances, and some which are just sort of
very
bizarre.
Human, yeah.
So it really depends. And again, we like to do a sort of mix of. So we've got some big names this season, but we've also got some people who are possibly less known now, but will be in 10 minutes' time, sort of thing. So when
the apocalypse comes.
Well, according to you, there's no point. What's the point? How do you seriously sit there and think that, or is this an idle comic thought? Because that's the sort of thing that goes into my head like a flipping.
I'm very relaxed about it.
Right.
I'm very relaxed about it.
Okay, you're upbeat. You're positive. You're chipper about it. Jesus Christ. Okay, that's what you see. Because I remember having the same. What I said before about like being when I was young and I'd watch Spitting Image and I'd find it reassuring that there were other adults out there. And I remember doing I did this topical show like the wipe shows.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly which one it was, but one time having a real freak out when I was really scared by some news story. There was a scary news story that I had to make light of effectively in the show. And I did it, and I thought I did quite well. And then afterwards, I had a bit of an existential meltdown where I thought, "Oh, I'm terrified by this, and I'm because looking at the way the world was going, I felt the same, like apocalyptic. I'm worried by this, but I'm now in the position of the people who were doing Spitting Image when I was a kid and I'm just scared. So, there's no. It's a bit like the moment where you realise that teachers are just." People, and you sort of see through the matrix. They're still
scared of the dentist.
They're still scared of the dentist, and they're
in the supermarket. They go shopping.
They go
normal
shopping.
Things.
I didn't realise that until I was. It was.
I saw it when I was 10. I was terrified.
Oh, I didn't see it until I was like 20 something, and I went to a barbecue and met someone who was just a normal person, and I said, "Well, what do you do?" And they said, "Oh, I'm a teacher." And that was when I was like, "Oh, I suppose all my teachers used to go to barbecues." I'm an idiot.
Do you think you could make Black Mirror now with a traditional UK broadcaster? Because obviously it started off on Channel 4, moved to Netflix. Mm-hmm. Could you make it in the way that you do with a, BBC, Channel 4? Whatever?
I would like to think so, but then often some of our most effective episodes are in a way designed to be smaller or around, like something like Common People. You could absolutely do.
But you couldn't do it at the scale that you do. The level of production?
Not. Again, you'd probably end up having to do it as a co-production. But I think that sort of scale, some of the episodes we've done one this time that's a huge sort of space opera scale, which is on a scale that I don't think the BBC has ever done, because it's sort of almost a movie. So it's although arguably, I guess, like new season of Doctor Who is their sort of thing as well. But that, again, that's a co-production. So it would definitely be a challenge, and again, it's sort of.
And why, just for people who aren't familiar with this, why would it be a challenge?
Because everything costs more money, much. And that's weirdly the thing. That's the thing I can see. The thing that worries me about AI, it's also is I can see the opportunity, because you can see that you could make things more cheaply, and so therefore, actually, does it mean that the BBC and ITV and so will they embrace that, and be able to sort of Will it level that playing field?
You think there are opportunities for
I think there
relatively smaller broadcasters to be
there
able
are,
to do
but
that?
my big worry is all the humans involved. Like, because I don't think that we want to. This is the thing I can't quite wrap my head around. Obviously, when as a writer, you look at sort of something like ChatGPT and you immediately feel threatened. It's your natural reaction is to think, "Oh, Jesus Christ!"
They
can do what I can do.
There's a 24-hour free version of me that you can just boss around. What if it's better? And I don't, but I don't think they are better. But then I would say that.
And they might be soon.
They might, but I also don't think we'll ever. The reason I was sort of saying I think that what will happen is you'll have things starring human beings, but that they're using AI to augment what's going on around them, is that I think I'd hate to use the word art, content. I hate content though as well. Art, work, creative work. That's all an attempt by a human to communicate something to other humans. And once you remove the human from one end of that pipe, that's a different. You've got a sort of theme park ride.
It's sort of B2B. At some point, it'll be bots using the art of other bots
to entertain other bots.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit like Words with Friends, isn't it? Do you remember Words with Friends? Do you remember that game? Words with Friends on the phone. It was like Scrabble.
Emily wouldn't want to play with friends online.
Oh, well, no, I was playing Words with Friends. It was a Scrabble game that you'd play.
Oh,
and
yeah,
and there's lots of people were playing it. And then I started cheating and looking up an online Scrabble dictionary.
No.
And then realised I was playing somebody else who was cheating. And so actually all we were doing was we were just channeling two computers at each other. Sure. But I think that I don't think you'll ever lose that as a consumer of stuff. You'll always want a human, a sort of messy human expressing something human. And what worries, I can see that there's a huge opportunity with AI in the same way that Photoshop is brilliant for artists. That's a powerful creative tool.
It makes things better.
Word processors are a powerful creative tool. The printing press is a powerful creative tool. I just worry about how we got an amazing industry and a lot of incredibly hardworking, very brilliant people, and how you safeguard all of that, I think has to be a priority.
Would you ever take on something that was consciously political in a way people might not expect? So, for example, we were just talking before you came in. Yesterday, we did an episode about the Supreme Court judgment yesterday with trans and so on. Would you ever take on something like that because it was something that you had something to say about it, something that perhaps people didn't expect?
I think in a way so if you look at, say, something like San Junipero, or we did an episode called Striking Vipers, which was, I think that's the way I'd do it, which is that was in San Junipero, that was about people. Striking Vipers was an episode where two guys, again, it's a comic premise, two guys go into a video game and one of them chooses a female character.
Oh, I watched it. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
And
then it starts being a
and it's not a political episode, but it is sort of about who you are as a person and sexuality and stuff like that.
Because you can imagine a Black Mirror episode consciously about changing your gender.
Yeah, you basically change you transmorph into something that isn't necessarily one sex or another, or human
you
or
are
another.
And so it's. But I think you just have to be. You would have to know exactly what it was you were saying, but you'd have to have a really good, clear human story. So quite often I have ideas for episodes and they'll percolate around for quite a long time. I'll have a sort of concept or something I want to. There's a topic or a thing or a moment I'm interested in, but until you know what the human story is, otherwise you're just writing an article.
One Star Trek fan to another, as I can tell. Would you ever like to write for Star Trek? They came along and said, Charlie Brooker would love you to relaunch Star Trek in a new form.
That would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? I think that, you see, I've never seen The Next Generation.
What? But really? You've just watched the original series?
I only saw the original series when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, really.
The whole Callister stuff. Wow.
Because the original Callister was based on, in a way, what it was riffing on was the old 1960s.
Yes, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so
we're going down a real rabbit hole here.
Yeah, so that's the one if they came to me, I was sort of asked about Doctor Who once. That would be
really,
yeah. And
you were asked about it to write it.
Maybe I shouldn't say
to
that.
be the next Doctor Who.
No, I wasn't asked that.
Now we're talking.
I wasn't asked to run it or anything like that. I was asked
but write for it.
Yeah, right. And that that felt like, that's a bit like the Home Office or something asking you to do. You feel
What's
like
your
that's
review?
my national duty, but I
Yeah.
just couldn't. I sort of just didn't have time because I was sort of busy. So if a behemoth like Star Trek or something like that, you'd at least take that call, wouldn't you?
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, you'd consider it. But again, it's whether because doing Black Mirror, you've got sort of control. You're not. It's I'm in control of what it is, and when you wander into somebody else's show, you're trying to please them.
How long will Black Mirror go on for?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
There's appetite for more, surely.
I'd love to keep doing it, so it slightly depends on that. It depends on whether people want to keep watching it. That's probably what it boils down to.
The new series hasn't been commissioned yet.
Well, no, you don't find any of these things out until about, I don't know, it's still till the dust settles.
But you'd like to keep going.
I'd like to. I mean,
You've got plenty more ideas.
I've got plenty more. Well, I've got whole.
You've got 6 more.
I've got.
What about Emily's nuke idea? Can you do that one?
Well, I don't. Well, it sounds like there isn't time.
No.
But
Very cheap to make.
there's one idea I wanted to do for a couple of years, and now I'm worried that it will look old-fashioned by the time. Well, if I said it would.
We're in a safe space here.
No, but if I say...
It's not about like Tamagotchis or something, is it?
No, well, I
you've
can't
done that
say
one.
what it is. But it is a thing that is very annoying, that several things seem to have happened in the real world.
Is it climate change?
No, it's not climate change. I did write a climate change musical once.
Oh, I bet that was uplifting.
It had a very Black Mirror-y tone. It had I would say, a cathartic ending.
A glacial time period.
It had a cathartic but optimistic ending. I will say that. But a lot of people died.
Much like this interview.
Yeah.
Charlie Brooker, what a joy.
Great to get you before the
Is that
apocalypse.
all right? Well, it's just, again, I'm going to think about that for days now. Thanks for that.
I think we've got a long lead time on this one.
How long?
Oh, God, decades.
Oh, that's not long. I mean, I'll be dead, but, so...
I'll join you
Speak
there.
for yourself, pal.
Yeah, okay.
Charlie Brooker, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.